getting ready to hit September now. So August 17th went by. The National Association of Realtors Settlement has gone into effect. Can you just give us quick points of what's that changed for buyers in this new market?
So yes, big changes have come our way in our industry, but also for the consumers. And so out of this National Association of Realtors settlement, this lawsuit, they wanted transparency. And one of the ways they wanted transparency was we no longer as realtors can put in the MLS what we're offering the buyer broker, the buyer's agent, in terms of commissions. We can't disclose that. So now it's going to be part of the contract.
Now you're saying that we can't disclose it. So previously, who paid for that compensation?
No, as long as I can remember, the seller always paid the commissions. So typically a listing agent would go in and do a listing presentation, said, hey, I'll sell your home for this amount, and then I'm going to offer a compensation to a buyer broker this amount.
So the seller knew up front, like it'll be this portion, say whatever it is, 5 bananas, like they hate us talking about compensation, but let's say 5%, and you're saying, hey, I'm going to pay the other party 3% of this. So the seller knew, hey, this is the total coming out. But specifically, it was the broker offering that compensation through MLS, correct?
Yeah, and in many cases, though, in previous years, it wasn't really disclosed what the listing agent was offering in terms of compensation. But now, because of the lawsuit, we can't even put that in any multiple listing service. As an agent, I can still put it on my website. I could put it on the yard sign. I could put it on marketing flyers, but I cannot put it in the MLS anymore.
Gotcha.
That's drawing a lot of confusion in our industry because agents think that they can or cannot pay commissions. And in reality, the sellers still can offer compensation to the buy-in broker.
So when you look at it, it's not necessarily a change of how much or anything like that. That's always been negotiable. And now we're putting it out there that a brokerage, the state, an association, nobody's setting the prices. It's an agreement between seller and broker, and seller to buyer, and buyer to broker.
Yeah, and it's always been negotiable. And out of this lawsuit settlement, there was antitrust laws saying that National Association of Realtors were price fixing. Them and the MLS and all the big box brokerages are all working together to price fix, when indeed we weren't. It is still negotiable. Whatever that compensation is, so seller can still offer it, seller can advertise it. It's just that we can no longer put it in the MLS.
I would think it would benefit with the transparency that you're talking about there for all parties, kind of knowing up front. Unlike when you go to a doctor's office, you don't necessarily know how much you got to pay up front, how much the insurance is going to cover, what your co-broke does, and you get those bills. This way, everybody's up front and knowing exactly what the cost is going to be, whether it's a flat dollar amount or a percentage, right?
As realtors, we have, 18 new or revised contracts, addendums, et cetera. It is a ton of stuff to know and learn. But I honestly believe this is a positive thing for our industry because of the transparency. We're going to have no choice but we have to disclose compensation, how we're getting paid, who's doing the paying, how much it is. So it's going to be all up front when you're dealing with a buyer. So this is going to elevate, in my opinion, our we're raising the bar, right? I think as realtors, we're going to raise our professionalism because of it. So I think this is going to be a good thing. It's just going to be a challenge to get through it for the next 6-9 months.
Yeah, I've since this all went into effect, I've met with several clients, both buyers, sellers, in recent times, and I'm finding it's more what I've always done. I just have the paperwork now to really show it versus trying to explain it and make sure they understand it, because I'm a big believer in transparency. This is what my costs are. This is what it is. You can ask somebody else what they're willing to charge, and you don't eliminate a buyer seller of doing it on their own. They can still do that if they want.
If a buyer wants to see a house and we're working with that buyer, we have to have them sign a buyer broker agreement prior to showing the house. And so you've been showing quite a few homes this past week, so with different buyers. What has been their response when you're presenting this buyer broker agreement?
Most of all, been very positive. They just go, "We trust you," and he's like, "No, I need to make sure you understand." So it's taking that extra time of, "I need to send this over to you. I know we had done it previously," and their whole thing is, "I trust you. I trust you." He's like, "Trust me, but this is just laying it out so that everybody knows the rules and what's going on and how it works." And there wasn't any resistance at all. But the idea is that they have a representative, an agent representing their interest. And I think that's all they're looking for, versus worried about how you get paid or who's paying what. They just want to make sure they're protected.
The confusion with a lot of buyers today is they hear the media saying things like, "Oh, you have to sign this document to be able to even go to an open house," which is not right, correct? And there's a lot of confusion out there. So buyers just need to understand that if they're working with a realtor in advance, that they need to sign this buyer broker agreement. And in my opinion, this buyer broker agreement is like you're retaining an attorney.
Right.
You meet with the attorney. He tells you what the fees are. He tells you what he's going to do. He explains fiduciary duties and advocacy and all that stuff. And it's done, and it's before they even start the work. That's what this is, correct?
That's exactly what it is. And I mean, having fiduciary responsibilities for an attorney is big, because you're relying on them to protect your interests, your money, on that. It's no different for us. When we go through a form, we have to disclose those fiduciary responsibilities.
We've always used buyer broker agreements. We just haven't been. So they've always been in existence, but we just weren't always using them, especially with past clients, right?
Right.
They trust us. They're going to use us. We didn't have to really have something formalize an agreement, but now we do. And it's no different than us taking on a seller. We have a listing agreement. Explains the process, what we're going to do to sell the house, the cost, everything. So now we're doing it for buyer's agents, and now it's actually a requirement to be able to show. I personally, I said this from the very get-go when this whole thing rolled out, was it's going to affect people like the first-time home buyers. They're typically the ones that don't have enough money for usually they're scraping together to come up with the 3.5% down payment. That's usually getting gifted to them. And then there's the 3% for closing costs. Now the onus falls on the buyer to pay the buyer's agent commissions because of the way this rolled out, the settlement. So if the seller decides, no, we're not going to offer compensation, and then the buyer's agent's going to try to negotiate it into the purchase contract, the seller to contribute 2-3%, whatever it is, towards the buyer's agent's fees, and the seller's going to counter it or reject it or accept it. If they reject it, they don't bother countering it, the onus is going to fall on the buyer's agent, the buyers, to pay the buyer's agent's commissions.
Kind of looks like agents doing a better job of disclosing, transparency, explaining, will allow buyers to know what they're responsible for, sellers to know what they're responsible for, and everybody can make decisions based on good information and not assumptions.
Absolutely.